What's up, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy, part of the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. We're continuing on through the journey, team by team, division by division, talking about our breakouts, busts, and my players to watch. Last week, we went over the NFC North, so if you missed that one, go ahead and take a listen to that one. Tonight, we're staying in the NFC, and we're going to continue on with the NFC West. A lot of great players on these teams. I'm really excited to talk about a few that maybe you guys disagree with me a little bit, but I've been pretty spot on this division in the past. So we'll get right into that. And once again, we're talking about our breakout player that's going to finish higher than they did last year and really start to make an impact where you can feel them as a starter, whether that's all the way up to a top tier player to a guy that is now, LB2, D-line 2, that's going to be a week-to-week provider of points for you. And then we're going to talk about our bust, somebody that is not going to finish where they did last year. Myriad of reasons behind that. We'll go through all of those. And then, of course, our players to watch. This can go either way. This is my, hey, this guy is a person to grab and put on your roster because I feel like they're going to be doing something, or it's get this guy off your roster as soon as you can when you can get something for it. So we'll have a little bit of yin and a little bit of yang tonight to talk about on that front. But as I said, we're going into the NFC West tonight, and we're going to start with those San Francisco 49ers. And the first player that we're going to talk about is our breakout player. Now, this is one that maybe a lot of you really don't have eyes on, but it's Diamodor Lunor, a.k.a. Demo is what he goes by. He's a cornerback for the San Francisco 49ers. And last year he played in the place of Mosley and Jason Verrett when they were injured, set to take over the starting role as both those guys are now off the team. So what did he do? Last year he finished the season with 79 tackles, a sack, and a pick. 49er corners are typically pretty solid when it comes to value in fantasy, in this fantasy scheme. Now, granted, his coverage is a bit weaker than I'd like to see, but that helps with the tackle numbers. That's where you can get some points because they're just not good enough. Now, there are some rookies that the 49ers drafted, but nobody significantly high. My only concern is if some of those rookies come in and start outplaying him to take his spot. But this is a guy that can be an easy gap fantasy starter for your team for at least this year, maybe more. And he is going to come in and have a significant role in this defense. And whenever you have this kind of a pass rush up front that the 49ers are going to have, quarterbacks make mistakes. Cornerbacks can take advantage of those mistakes. And hopefully Demo is the guy that's going to be taking care of that this year as a breakout player in this 49er defense. Now, my bust player is extremely difficult to choose for this team. I'm going to be honest. I like a lot of the players to take a step forward. The one guy that I'm going to talk about is Drake Jackson, second-year defensive end out of USC. A lot of people have this guy primed for a breakout this year, but I think he's still 1 year away. Watching his film, watching his, his one-on-one reps in games, he had 3 sacks last year and 14 tackles, and that was playing 30% of the snaps. Well, Seth, if you multiply that out, 90% of the snaps, you'd assume 50 tackles, 9 sacks. You would assume that, right? You think that it'd just automatically go up that way. Obviously, sacks don't really work that way, but tackles kind of do. I just don't see that coming this year. They got Hargrave they brought in from Philly. They've got Bosa, and those two dudes are going to be the sack kings on this defense. Drake will be the cleanup guy. But those two will keep the room spotless, and Drake won't have much to do. I'm also not 100% sold that he's going to jump from a 30% snap percentage up to, 70 or 80%. I think he could easily just as easy be in a 50% rotation type of play, and that's not going to get it done. And if you're taking, pulling a trigger on a guy in a trade like Drake Jackson or picking him up in a redraft league to add value, I'm nervous that he's even going to be able to do that this year. He wasn't crazy last year, and I think that he's not going to be crazy good this year either. I think he has the talent to get there, but he feels like a guy that's going to take more of like a tight end path. Year 3 might be the breakout. Even into year 4 is when you'll start seeing this guy figure it all out and put it together. But Drake Jackson, the defensive end for the 49ers, is my bust player. So that gives us the player to watch. And my player to watch is really none other than Fred Warner, linebacker. Stud player. I love Fred Warner. But as I've talked about in previous podcasts, I'm very worried that Dre Greenlaw will finally overtake him as the LB1 on this team. He did it last year on a per-game basis. He just didn't play all the games. And that's always been an issue with Dre Greenlaw. I get it. But Fred Warner is the guy that I put as my player to watch because I want to see if he's still going to be averaging that 130 tackle number. Or will he start to drop down to around 100 tackles a game? Keep an eye on him, and if he's on your team and you start seeing a dip, maybe it's time to trade him during the season after a big week for an up-and-coming linebacker that's going to, not be in a crowded linebacker field. Albeit, last year, the linebacker room was worse for Fred Warner than it is this year. So that is boding well for him to have a little bit of a pick-me-up. I just do worry about how these two are going to play together and if he's going to be, the top dog on this defense. I'm not saying he, cut him, anything like that. Don't be ridiculous. I'm just saying that if you have an opportunity to get somewhere where you're getting the tackle hoss LB1 for a Fred Warner because people are, name values a lot, entertain the offer. Maybe you're going to get, let's just say after week 3, you see Troy Anderson over in Atlanta doing well, so you get a Troy Anderson plus for a Fred Warner type situation, or a Pete Werner for the Saints plus situation, where that's only going to get better for him with Demario Davis getting older. There's some opportunities out there to kind of look at pivoting a big-name player and actually not losing any points per week by doing it. So Fred Warner is my player to watch. Not saying he's going to fall off a cliff. He's still only 26 years old. But there are some questions. So that moves us over to the Seahawks. And my breakout player is not really a breakout player. It is more of a, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And it's Bobby Wagner back with the Seattle Seahawks after a short tenure with the LA Rams. Listen, last year I had him on my bus team for the Rams. And I was wrong. He actually, started out poor on the season, let's be honest. Then he picked it up in the back half of the season, probably because partially they were so bad that they were always on the field. But he's back with Seattle, and this is 1 year breakout statement. It's not a big breakout situation given, his end of season ranking last year was phenomenal. But he's back in a comfortable situation. He's back in a tackle-heavy role. He's back being the guy for this defense. Jordan Brooks will be slow going into the start of the year. Might not even, play this year or barely any of it. Wagner's in line to finish the season with 150-plus tackles. Easy. Could absolutely happen. And here's the thing. You're going for a championship. Trade for him. Go get him. He's not going to command massive dollar amounts because he is older. Let's be honest. This could be the last year he plays. Maybe he has one more after this in him. You're not going to have to pay top dollar for a Bobby Wagner. But he's going to give you top dollar results. And vice versa. If you're a team that is competing for this year, but you're always trying to look to get a little bit younger, it's going to be tough to get somebody that's going to give you the value that Bobby Wagner will this season if you're trying to win it all. Now, if you feel like your team's not headed in the right direction halfway through the season, pull the trigger and give him to a contender. Same thing with if he's on your team and you're not a contender. Now is not the time to trade Bobby Wagner. The time to trade Bobby Wagner is in season when people are ready for the playoff push or are looking in that direction. That's where you're going to get the most value when somebody knows they have a chance to win it. That's where you're going to have to move Bobby Wagner if you're wanting to. But, like I said, I expect him, honestly, to finish as the top 5 linebacker this year. Absolutely. So that brings me to my bust player. Same position, different story. Jordan Brooks, linebacker. It's been no secret that I've been a non-believer in Jordan Brooks being competitive this year all offseason. Late ACL surgery. He had it in January. But what blows my mind is that people are still drafting him like he's a day one starter, like he's going to be a top 3 linebacker this year, when every sign to what Seattle's been doing points to that not being the case. Example number 1, they bring in Devin Bush from Pittsburgh. Granted, I know Cody Barton was gone. They moved on from him, so they did need some other linebackers, but they brought him in early in free agency. Step 2, they declined Jordan Brooks' 5th-year option. Sorry, but they know more about what's going on than we do, and if they're saying the guy that led the league or close to leading the league in tackles the last 3 years is no longer a valuable option to pick up a 50-year option on, red flag. And then they bring in Bobby Wagner on a 1-year deal. Later in free agency, they gave him solid money, which tells me, again, Jordan Brooks not progressing the way that they are expecting him to be worth playing this year. Hope is there for so many fantasy players for this year, and I say steer clear of him because he won't be anywhere close to his 2022 or 2021 numbers. Nowhere near it. Mid-season, trade target for the future, sure, go ahead, give it a shot. Don't overpay, because you never know. Devin Bush, guy brought over here, tore his ACL year 2, never been the same at linebacker. Just has not been what he was. So Jordan Brooks is a guy to just let somebody else take it. I'm okay being wrong on Jordan Brooks. If he comes out and balls, I'm fine with that. But I'm not wrong. Steer clear of Jordan Brooks this year. Player to watch. Jamal Adams, safety. Here's the reason he's my player to watch. I say to watch him just specifically if you have him on your team. And as soon as he has a big game, trade him for whatever you can get. Last year, he was my bust player. Last year, I said, move him during the offseason. Move him before the season starts and his name value is bringing high volume. He goes out there, gets injured week 1, but that's not the reason I said move him. He had an entire season the year before with 0 big plays. Just nothing. Got paid and just was on the field. Now he's 27 years old. In the last 50 possible games for him to play, he's played 25. He still has name value. He still has age that if people take a look at it, they're happy with. And you need to capitalize on this after a solid game. Cash out even if it's at a loss from a couple years ago if you traded for him. Be left with something rather than nothing. Okay? He's just not the guy we were hoping he was going to be. And that happens. Got paid. Got lazy. This is where we're at. He very well could kind of get back on the bandwagon, but there's so many other safeties I'd rather have that have so many less question marks and so much less of a headache to deal with than Jamal Adams. Make the move. So that moves us to the Rams. Now with Bobby Wagner gone, that opens a wide hole for Mr. Ernest Jones, linebacker, to come on down and take the crown for this defense. Ernest Jones' season is upon us. Last year, his sophomore season, had 114 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pick. Really solid numbers. Especially when you realize he only played 66% of snaps compared to Bobby Wagner's like 98%. Wagner's gone, and the rest of the defense is brand new. Jones can lead this team into fantasy stardom. 130 plus tackles is extremely doable. Add in a few sacks like Wagner had last year, and you're looking at a really solid linebacker too this season. He's going to take a step forward because there's nobody else there to take that step. Now, my bust player is anybody on this defensive line that's not named Aaron Donald. This team is a mess when it comes to cap space, and they're in a massive rebuild process where they just are drafting a bunch of people. They had no high picks. They drafted a lot of late to mid picks, and it's just a giant dartboard, throw all the darts and see what sticks situation. And I'm not willing to trust anybody outside of Aaron Donald for consistency, for consistent point scoring. Just not. Probably would be tough on the D-line all year for that. There probably won't be somebody that really starts to stand out. So just do yourself a favor and let somebody else have this headache. Now, my player to watch is kind of twofold. With this team, preseason is going to be huge. Take a look at the depth charts. Take a look at who's playing on this defense. Secondary is where I'd focus my energy at. Cornerback, nickelback, safety. That's where I want to see who's doing what. With that being said, my player to watch out of this team is Jacoby Durant, nickel cornerback. Last year, he started getting more playing time. Basically, what does that mean? When he played more than 60% of snaps, never made it into past 85% last year, but he played 60% or more starting week 13 to the end of the year. For reference, this guy averaged 9.7 points per game in our scoring metric last year. During the week 13 to the end of the year, he was doubling that essentially, 17 points per game. Picks and tackles, baby, picks and tackles. And if he hangs on to this nickel corner role in preseason, keep an eye on him, this guy is going to be a steal for your team. Probably undrafted in a lot of leagues, but you're going to get somebody that can come out of nowhere and give you consistent play. So Jacoby Durant, cornerback, a.k.a. nickel cornerback for the LA Rams. But as I said, this defense is the epitome of no-name defense outside of Aaron Donald. I'm really curious to see how everything pans out with this team. And that takes us to the Arizona Cardinals, which are a mess. We all understand that, but they're a mess on offense with no Kyler, possibly, no more DeAndre Hopkins. When offenses play poor, defense is on the field, fantasy-wise, that makes Seth happy. So, who's my breakout? This is so weird. Zaven Collins. Defensive end? Rumors are swirling that Zaven Collins will be lining up at defensive end this season. And the fantasy hopeful in me wants him to play a hybrid linebacker, defensive end kind of situation. A little bit of Micah Parsons action there. But of course, have that defensive line eligibility in your league. This is the key to his breakout play. Defensive line eligibility. By having that ability to play D-line while also having the ability to rack up 70-plus tackles will make him a massively valuable asset. The guy had 100 tackles last season with 2 sacks. Drop down the tackles a little bit, just because that's probably where it's going to be, and bump up the sacks to 7. You're talking about a top 15 defensive end. And let's just say that the rumors are the rumors and he plays linebacker for essentially the entire season. But he still has defensive line eligibility. You take that 100 tackles and 2 sacks line from last year, and you're extremely happy with him as a defensive lineman. So he is a glitch in the matrix for this season, is what I feel like, and it's worth paying attention to. My bust player for the Cardinals is Mr. Budda Baker, safety. This guy hits so hard. How hard does he hit? Hard enough to fracture his shoulder. He fractured it late last year. He's demanding a trade from the team, although he has been showing up to offseason stuff. And we're changing into a different defensive scheme. Just count me out on Budda with that trifecta of concerns. I just don't like the guy that is massively known for hitting and tackling to have a significant shoulder injury like a fracture. It just bothers me for what his mental, makeup will be, and just honestly, just the ability that he could re-injure himself at some point. He had a slight bounce back last year, going up to 100 level tackles after finishing below 100 the year before. But there's just too much noise around him for me to feel comfortable. I just don't want to do it. It's kind of the same thing that I said about Jamal Adams. There's so many good young corners and safeties that I feel much better taking some of these guys rather than taking the risk with the question marks of Budda Baker. I'd be much more willing to take Jalen Thompson on the same defense. So with that being said, do what you will, but I just a lot of question marks. Just a lot of question marks. He's a great player, but just concerns me. And part of with my busts are, how many players do they even have on their team that people know about? How can you bust if nobody even knows what you are, right? So that brings me to my player to watch, which is probably the only other player on this defense that anybody actually knows, not named Jalen Thompson. And this is Isaiah Simmons. Again, nickelback? Got first-round linebacker Zaven Collins, now playing defensive end. You've got first-round linebacker Isaiah Simmons, top 10 pick, by the way, now playing nickel corner. I'm not saying he can't do it. This dude's a hell of an athlete. But I'd prefer seeing him at safety, personally. But when you have Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, it's a little tough. So maybe they will trade Budda mid-season and put Isaiah back at safety. But the big problem is that they declined Isaiah Simmons' fifth-year option. And with all these wild changes this offseason, Zaven and Isaiah are kind of getting hosed with their roles. Once again, Simmons is a hell of an athlete. He will be able to blitz from this nickel position, maybe even get to linebacker level tackles, and he could end as the CB1 this year because of the weird glitch in the matrix system that's going to have him play. But once again, if we're talking dynasty now for a moment, they cut his fifth-year option. So now he goes somewhere next offseason that may know how to use him or will also fail to use him. And we have no idea what that looks like. If I look into my Magic 8 ball, shake it up, and ask what team he's going to go to next year, it's telling me the Baltimore Ravens. It's telling me that that's where he's going to go. Patrick Queen got his fifth-year option denied too. Isaiah walks over into that Ravens defense, plays next to Roquan, and they use him however they want, essentially. But that's just my, like I said, my little 8-ball magic figuring this out. But there it is. That is the NFC West. My favorite team as far as IDP goes is 49ers, even though that their offense will probably be good enough that they'll have less snaps than some of these other teams. But they just have firepower, man. Second favorite team will... man, I feel like it's going to be the Cardinals, but I just don't know who the players are going to be. And then it's going to be the Seahawks, and then it's going to be the Rams. Rams, I think they're just going to be mixing people around to just kind of feel what's right and see what fits. So you're really not going to know who is the guy outside of, the Aaron Donalds and even Ernest Jones, I think, is probably the second most confident people are on that defense. But we'll continue to dive through this. We're getting closer and closer to the season, closer and closer to drafts. If you have any questions or want to reach out, hit us up on Facebook. Reach out on the answer or shoot some questions at the bottom of the podcast too. We'll happily get back with you. And if you haven't already, check out my podcast, buddies, Fat Boys Dynasty podcast. They record typically on Monday nights, going over everything offensive to complement the everything defense that we're going through here on Defense Wins Fantasy. But until next time, remember that defense wins fantasy. And we'll see you guys next week.